Okay, we are live here and possibly living to regret it. So anyway, Bob Coppage here, and I'll let our speakers introduce themselves and all that. I want to warn you that we have a complete total lack of control on this topic today, and two people who are going to be really good at having lack of control. No, it's one of those, we wanted to combine both the cybersecurity along with year-end, holiday, blah, blah, blah. And of course, we had to take advantage of A Christmas Carol because of everyone knows that I am a warm and jolly. No. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead right into it. And so we're really just decided to go with basically 12 cybercrimes. And what are some of the things? And we're just going to talk about what to look out for and the like. So without further ado, Matt, I'm going to let you start off since you're immediately below me.
Fair. Next on the line card. It's almost like we planned this. Hi, my name is Matt Lee. I'm a senior director of security and compliance at a company called Pax8. We're a cloud distributor. And I am an external evangelist and speaker and educator, also a subject matter learner, I suppose. They call me an SME, but around zero trust and zero trust architecture. And happy to be here. This is my 5th video I've been forced to do based on the judiciary of the state of Connecticut with Bob. So, 2 more.
But 2 more and the ankle bracelet comes off.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Wow, it's hard to follow that. I don't know. I have not been forced to be here today. So Tammy Gadetsis, I'm a senior information security person here at KeyBank. My team and myself are in charge of security education awareness. That's both for our clients as well as our employees here at the bank. So everywhere from our consumer clients all the way up through our large corporate. So much like Matt, right, I'm learning all the time and then just trying to share that knowledge out to the public of what we hear, because sitting within the walls of the bank, right, I sit right within all of the security folks in various lines, from our fraud folks and others. So I'm hearing lots of intel. So trying to take that and then synthesize it and make it English for others and then translating it and sharing it out. So excited to be here.
Cool. We'll see what we can do about that.
Yeah.
So before we get started on the count of 12, why I'm going to open this. This is going to be very, very free form if you haven't figured that part out already.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that the end of the year seemed to bring out so much fraud, crime, cyber and otherwise, and the like? And I'll throw that out for either one of you.
It's back to this whole Sutton quote from Bank Robbery, which I think is applicable because I have Tammy here as well, right? And when asked, why do you rob banks? The answer was recorded in the annals of time as because that's where the money is, right? And I think that's the point. Most of the United States GDP around retail is all earned from Black Friday forward, right? It's all part of that, at least in historical belief. And so you see this is where there's so much money flowing, then the threat actors want to get a piece of it, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's back to why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. So
yeah, and they like the holidays, right? At the holidays, people are shopping more. From a business perspective, you have people that are out of the office. You might have people that are doing, not their normal job. So there's procedures. Are we making sure that they're following them? And really around the holidays, there's just distractions, right? We have a lot of things going on. It's a prime time for them to send something out to us. And, if we're talking about from a company perspective, again, it might not be the normal people that are doing normal activities, and they can make themselves a target. It could be easier for them to go after them.
100%.
So essentially what we have is we have so much, there's so much more complexity to what everybody is doing. And in some cases, it's great complexity because look at all these new sales going on, look at all these new things going on. And sometimes it's complexity because of end of year, end of quarter, end of month.
Right.
And also because people like Tammy, I didn't even think about it in terms of like people taking time off or doing a job they don't normally do day to day.
Yeah.
All of those open the door for the bad guys who are more than happy, just like marketing and salespeople are more than happy to come out with new commercials that focus particularly on it. The bad guys are more than happy to come out with new stuff that they're going to bring out and bring to market. And Roddy just added a point.
Yeah, I'm pointing at Roddy on this one, 100%.
Yeah. They're spending the most money, hectic time for business, normal workflow disruption, and increased stress. And especially if you have like 6 grandkids, you have to buy Christmas presents for them. There's freaking stress. Anyway, I digress. So cool stuff.
Speaking for a friend.
Keep that in mind as we go through these 12 things.
Yeah.
Because these 12 things are not necessarily year end or holiday or shopper or the like, but it makes it more. There's more incentive for them to use these things. So, and I think, Tam, we agreed you're going to handle the even ones, or start with the even ones.
Yep, that's what we're going to do, and then we'll just share as we go along, right?
Yay!
So everybody's favorite password. This is my husband's favorite topic. We battle on this all the time at home. So, bad guys love passwords. So why? Because they're so easy to crack. And, it really only takes them seconds for them to crack a lot of people's passwords because they're using simple common dictionary, words and the passwords. They're using short passwords. And we love to use the same passwords across sites. So go ahead, you're using the same password on social media. So your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Twitter, but you're also using those on bank accounts and streaming services. And that makes it really easy for them. And then layer that in if you're not using something like multi-factor, right, where you're not breaking that up. If they find a way to get your passwords, and hey, by the way, a lot of our information, right, is out on the dark web from any past breaches that our information was out there. So if you're using a password that's the same across sites, they get one of those, they now have access to all of them so that they can do things like, trying to jam credentials into various websites, which they do, including banking sites, right? And they're just hoping that they find a match. So it's just really important that you're not using the same password across sites. As much as my husband curses me when he can't figure out how to get into one of our accounts because I have them all different and they're long and complex and they're ridiculous things that nobody would ever guess, which means he also can't ever figure them out. And he's like, "Ugh, just tell me what they are." But yeah, so that's why they like them.
I would add to that. So most people know, Bob, that I'm a bit of a threat actor in my own rights of doing my research and learning how these things work. And I just a few hours ago downloaded a script, Tammy, that allows me to check for $35 a year. It's on sale right now.
Yeah.
I can
Cheap,
check the database.
It's a holiday sale.
It's a holiday sale.
Yeah,
right. And I can go
Monday,
find out your
awesome.
password. It takes have you been pwned, and then takes it to a database and pulls the data for me. I can get your password in about 0.34 seconds is about what the API return time is. So it's really fast.
Because again, the bad guys are business people.
Yep.
Right.
They're making money out of this, however they're doing it. And Tammy, so just to be very, very clear, I'm fine by just adding exclamation points, right?
Every time.
No, please don't do that. I mean, Matt hopes you do that so this $35 a month subscription works, but I don't want you to do that. Yeah, and don't use things like, okay, it's winter now, I'm going to use winter 1 through 2 3 exclamation point, right? Like we see people, because a lot of times, right, passwords expire after 90 days. So what is that? That's like the different season. So we've seen that before. And then it's like summer, winter, fall. Like don't do that. Use something, think of a passphrase is what I tell people. So, and a lot of people don't realize spaces are valid characters. So you can use a space and do a phrase instead of just a password. And that's what I do. Again, that's what drives my family crazy. But, using that and using spaces makes it more complex.
And also to add to that, you can protect yourself also if you don't want to try to manage all these different passwords and things. Password managers are the perfect way to do this.
Yes.
Yes.
And one of the fun things, back to what you said, Tammy, I'll share a story about my wife because she's not in earshot. And when we went to a password manager, she simply stored the same password in every single site. When I went to look through it, I was like, babe, these are not better. It's the same password in every site. The intention is to randomize these and change them in each one. But if you do use a password manager, you now can store really complex things that aren't necessarily even human readable, that can be easily copied and pasted into things on all of your devices, your iPhone, and then you protect that like it's the most valuable thing in the world, because it is. Yeah, 100%.
And Ann is asking recommended password managers for an SMB.
Yeah, LastPass, there's not many you can go wrong with. LastPass is neat because they tie in your personal and your business. One of the challenges you have as an SMB is that you often mix those two. They often intermingle. You want to keep them separate. And so LastPass does a good job, in my opinion, of letting you have a business vault and a personal vault. And thereby you can kind of have that segmentation at the natural human level.
Yeah, and it will also help you create the passwords. So if you don't want to start figuring out like, all right, what random words do I put together so that all of that, the password managers are nice because it will help you create the password. And then you don't even have to come up with all of those things.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the Spaceballs.
No, I saw
in the
it
comments.
pop up as I looked. Yeah. And no, we don't want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's the same as my luggage.
Unless there's an exclamation point at the end.
Or 2. Yeah.
And we do need to move on to the next one. Carmen, if you want to reach out to me after the meeting or the like, happy to talk to you. We're actually in the process of evaluating a next generation password manager on our side of the fence. So absolutely happy to talk to you. And same thing, Ann, on your side. Mr. Matt, 11 bots of hacking.
Yeah, if I remember, the conversation we want to talk about here is really that you oftentimes are just a means to an end. And so when you start thinking about the economy of an ecosystem around cybersecurity, why would I want to victimize somebody at home? Why would I want to gain access to someone's machine at home? I need a place to be coming from. I need a proxy, right? For example, if I need Bob to go buy me beer because I'm not old enough, Bob is my proxy for alcoholic beverages, right? So that's a proxy. And so in this conversation, what I would like to do as a threat actor is I want to use sometimes what's called a distributed attack, where I'm going to have a lot of people attacking something at once. And for that, I need bots. I need an army of these bots. And oftentimes those bots are used to sell to the highest bidder, to let them use them for nefarious purposes and things like that. So one of the challenges is people ask, why would anybody attack me? Why would they use a ad about this new sale on Black Friday to get me to click at home? What do they hope to gain from me? Oftentimes you're being used as a bot and part of a bot army to be used for that. The other thing I'd also add to it is, back to Tammy's first one about the passwords, I'm going to use those bots to try those passwords. Why? Well, because the good guys have gotten good at understanding, hey, if one IP address, one computer keeps sending me all these bad passwords, it's probably not Bob just missing his password up every time, right? It's probably Matt attacking him. So what I do is you would use different bot networks to have those questions come from multiple machines over and over again so that they help to evade that is that Bob challenge as it's trying multiple passwords, as it's learning that. So, the general conversation is do the things at home to protect yourself, right? Have antivirus on your machine, stay up to date, do updates, things like that. And this one's more focused at, you at home, but in the same breath, the bots have an advantage because of updates. If you aren't updating your machines and staying up to date, then if there's a vulnerability, I can take advantage of it. I can get that little chink in the armor that needs to exist, or that break in the heat shield to bring it to challenger conversations. So ultimately, then you can be used as a proxy to attack others and as a proxy to avoid prosecution and clawback provisions potentially for other thefts. Yeah.
Cool. Tammy, got anything?
I would just say, and people, making sure you're expanding what you think could be hacked into, right? So it's all of those Internet of Things, right? It's all of the devices we have in our phones now. So we need to think beyond, your laptop, your phone. It's really, it could be your smart fridge, your different
your toaster.
Amazon and Alexa, your your security cameras, and all of those things, have, as Matt mentioned, you need to be making sure you're updating the software for those. So if there's any vulnerabilities, they're being updated, but also make sure you're not using, to tie back to the passwords, those things, a lot of them have default passwords that are out in the web. People know what those default passwords are. So you need to make sure that you're changing the passwords on those so that somebody isn't gaining access to them through that just default password because you never changed it.
Yep.
Cool. The last thing I'll add to this is to keep in mind the two most, or two of the most popular hacks that we talk about is one is Target. That was not an IT, it was a hack of an HVAC company who then got people, the bad guys then got through to Target through the Internet of Things devices they had. And also, I think the largest hack over in Las Vegas was through aquariums, because they had aquariums that were on the internet and got through. So absolutely. Cool. So we go back over to Tammy. Payroll frauds.
Yeah. So I think in this one, we just wanted to talk a little bit about, it's not always just when you're getting attacked, how they're getting to you, but really they could be, going about it in a way that you don't think about. And there's also information out there in places that you wouldn't think could be used in an attack, but if it's out there and available, there's probably a way for them to use that information. So payroll fraud is an interesting one, kind of from the banking side. The way we usually see it is as a type of ACH fraud. And what typically happens is this, threat actor is going to send an email that looks like it's a legitimate email. They may have hacked, or compromised an email account, or they may just be spoofing something so that it looks like it's coming from, an individual employee. And they, find information on LinkedIn. So they figure out who the accounting or the HR people are at a particular company. They can figure that out by looking at the company, looking at the titles you have, looking at the people you're connected to. And then they're sending an email pretending to be an employee and asking you to change their direct deposit information. And so, you as the HR person would get that information, and then you're probably going to respond back to that email if it looks legitimate. And at that point, even if you're asking them to, hey, fill out this form, they probably have found information to figure out how to fill that form and pretend to be the employee. Sometimes it's because the individual employee might have clicked on a link somewhere, so they've gotten access to their computer, right? There's lots of different ways that they could be gathering it. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is trying to get you to go outside of normal process, update the employee's information without validating. If you're responding via email, you're really responding with the fraudster. And then you update that information and you don't know something went wrong until that employee calls and says, I never got my paycheck, which at holiday time is really bad because they're trying to go shopping and they don't have any money. And that's just a bad situation. And that's when you're realizing that something happened that was wrong. So just making sure you have processes that you're validating it outside of that, having, requiring employees to go into some system again that have layers of control like multi-factor or something, so that you're authenticating the true user that's logging in to update that type of payroll information is really important. And just remember, when you're responding via any type of communication method, right, you need to make sure that if it's something where you're changing any type of payment information, that you're using kind of a known source and you're not responding to an unexpected message that you're getting.
100%.
Did I miss anything, Matt?
No, I mean, I think the point you're trying to definitely make is the attacks don't always have to be against your company, can be against your users.
Right.
And to your point, Tammy, all those quizzes that go around, Bob, like I saw you filling that one out yesterday about what's your dog's name, your street, that fun stuff. Those are used against you because there's a term out there called OSINT. OSINT stands for open source intelligence. And what I do in OSINT is go gather data about you, and I don't even have to work very hard. There are many of the scripting things that I can use my machines to just pull that data back almost instantaneously. And if you've been really bad about leaking that data out there, it'll be even easier for us to emulate your employees. So the challenge is, to Tammy's point, as the SMB, you have to be aware of that vector, that your users' weaknesses may be used against you if you don't have the appropriate controls in place.
Cool. Yeah. So in this one, we're really talking about an education and awareness question when we talk about the strategies. And also, Tammy, to your point, the process of never give this information out or take these actions unless you've done these things ahead of time.
Right.
So whereas the other two, we were talking about like password management, not using the same password, bots, patching makes it. This one is absolutely the human element. I mean, passwords is too, but we need help to do that.
Yeah.
This one really is buyer beware. And I've noticed that the request to change my banking account or the like, those have been coming out fast and furious for us anyway, over the past several weeks. It's not new, but there seems to be a new wave of that stuff going on.
Yeah.
So cool. Next, broken backups.
Yeah.
Which just sounds like it's the beginning of a country song.
It is. You actually have to cry into your beer before you start, or at least after you finish. Yeah. This is a reminder that I used to have this saying when I was in technology and directly in the field was, a lot of mistakes can be made with a really good backup, right? And when you start thinking about what is cybersecurity, it is the CIA triad, or confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Backup speaks both to integrity and availability. And I can't tell you how often the threat actors use these times and broken backups to say, I'm going to go ransom you. And your answer would have been, I have backups I can recover from. Or an inside actor. I just met with an MSP that yesterday was talking about an inside actor that had deleted records over time and had absolutely destroyed and stolen all of his clients and deleted contracts so that they could start a new business and steal those things. And all of that could have been avoided with really good backups, because you would have the proof and the data you need to show that integrity has been manipulated. So this is a reminder, even though not directly how the bad guys attack any different than throughout the year. In this case, make sure you have good backups. And more importantly, as a business, what needs backed up? Have you looked at and said, where's all my data? If it's shifted from on-premise to cloud and you haven't answered how you're going to deal with the backups of that, you've abandoned some of your protections. And so just remember that this is Matt and my friendly tip of have good backups and protect them, have a copy off site, and make sure they're not with the same password that you use for your normal stuff. That way I don't just have the ability to destroy it with an exclamation point would do it. Yeah. Anything I missed, Tammy, if you want to add into that?
I think the only thing there is also, if you have those backups, make sure you're testing your processes. So it's great to have things in place, but if you're not testing it to make sure the backups are really working, and that if you in fact need to go to your backups, you can actually upload them, then your backups are useless, right? Because that's the other thing I've seen. We're like, great, we have these things, but then you're not testing it on a regular basis,
100%.
and then you go to flip over and they don't work. So just making sure that you have, just a regular schedule that you're checking those throughout the year, just to make sure, does my process work? Am I, going through that kind of business continuity exercise to say, if this goes down, because it's not always just the bad guys, there could be weather things or other things, right?
Absolutely.
And things go down and you need to go to your processes. So just making sure you're testing them to make sure they actually work.
I got to go put on my choir robes, Tammy, because you just preached that right now. And I'm 100% with you on this one. So I'm going to sing. Ann Gross, also MFA rules, back to your earlier point, Tammy, on the changes and change control, having something to say, listen, if it changes, then you must pick up phone to verify those type of things. And those are called administrative controls, is what those are called. So fantastic.
Cool. And a couple of things along those lines is the way I would phrase it, Matt, is the last line of defense in all bad news IT is a good backup.
Yeah.
Okay. But also to your point, you want to make sure that the same disaster, whether it be a security or a natural disaster or accident or whatever, the same disaster that could ruin or harm your initial data cannot also harm your backups.
Exactly.
There has to be, air gap is usually the term that's used, whether they be credentials, physical, security, whatever.
Combination.
Exactly. Yeah. Good point. So cool. And I can absolutely tell you, and people do not test backups. Yeah.
And for anybody watching right now, Bob, people have probably figured this out. Every odd one, you can go use the restroom. You can take a break because it's going to be really technical and it's going to be me speaking. So if you just want to tune in on Tammy's even ones, it'd be a much better win, I think, in life.
Yeah, this is why I don't have any of these assigned to me, because I don't want people going to the bathroom. Okay, that may not be the best way to phrase that, but
yeah, maybe that was off put. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Threat actors acting, which is not what is going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is bad actors acting, but even
fair.
Right.
Anyway,
True story.
moving right along. Tammy.
So I think the conversation here is just a little bit about, we can go lots of different ways with this, but I think what instantly came to my mind was really around just the different ways that, and this is the human element again, right? Like social engineering and how they can manipulate users to do things that they wouldn't normally do, right? And that they probably have, I always call them spidey senses, right? Their spidey senses are going off and they still choose to do that action and later go, oh, that that didn't make sense. Why would somebody call me and ask for that? I think
Yeah.
what's interesting is we've seen kind of over time, it used to be a little bit easier to, I think, identify an attack, right? You would have these phishing emails that were just blatantly obvious they were ridiculous, and those still happen. I mean, me and my husband have the ongoing joke of who has the number one prize from this random Apple text that you get, right? And we were getting for months and months, like, you won the number one, you're in the number one spot. And he'd be like, oh, I'm number two today. And so it was like a back and forth, like, which one am I today? And right, those we can laugh about. But what we're really seeing is the use of multiple methods to get at our clients. So what do I mean by that, right? They like to impersonate banks, which don't make us very happy. So they like to send emails out to businesses, right? And they don't know who you bank with. Sometimes they might have figured something out if they tapped into your accounts, but what they're doing is they're just throwing lines out there and hoping that they get a response. So the new one is they like to send out text messages saying, you have a bad transaction on your account. Let us know yes or no if this is good. And it doesn't matter whether you respond yes or no. They just want to validate, are you a valid phone number of somebody that will respond to this and potentially a client of X bank, right? Once you respond, regardless of what the response is, you get a phone call. So now they're going beyond like one method, they're doing multiple methods, and they'll call you. And again, regardless of what you attempted, if you say yes, then they're going to say, okay, well, give me some more information and we'll fix that for you and we'll stop that from hitting your account. And if you say no, they'll say great, but we'll stop this and make sure that nothing else, because we see something suspicious. So, they're tricky too because they call with a spoofed phone number, right? So it'll look like it's coming from a bank, right? It'll be a phone call that shows a help desk number that you might be familiar with because they found it somewhere on the web, right? It'll show the caller ID will show, KeyBank or whatever X bank on the caller ID. So you think legitimately like, oh no, I got a fraudulent text and now I told them no. So now my bank is calling me, and then they'll start asking for things like login credentials. So let me just verify, Matt, that it's you. Can you tell me what your login ID is? And
It's
by the
ML.
way,
Oh,
let me write it down. Yeah.
oh.
And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and send you a one-time passcode so that I can validate you, even though I
Yeah.
called you, and then I'm going to use that. And so what they're basically doing is getting, you're giving up the keys to the kingdom, and now they will get into your account and then attempt to send money out the door.
Yeah.
So the tip here, right, is that as banks, we're not going to call you unexpectedly and start randomly asking you for all this information. And that should send up kind of red flags for you to call your known contact at the bank that you work with all the time or your known 800 number and say, hey, something's going on with this. I got a legitimate one a couple weeks ago from the bank, but it was a number that I wasn't familiar with, even though I do this for a living, right? And so I was like, I don't know for sure if that's the number because of the method that it was sending it to me. So I just called the number I knew and said, hey, can we check this out? It ended up being legitimate, but even I was like, oh, I'm not sure. So I called what I knew.
And
And
let me interject something there on that,
Yeah.
because I think this is a point needs to be doubled down. Is that banks love it when you call to verify.
yes. Yeah.
This is
Yes.
not I'm going to look like an idiot if I call to make sure
No,
this is legit.
absolutely not. There's
No,
no embarrassment,
absolutely.
no uncomfortableness. Yeah.
Absolutely. The same thing on our end when clients call us and say, I'm not sure if this is a hack or a spoof or whatever. So I feel kind of stupid calling. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The opposite is absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece I wanted to also drill into from Tammy's point, and then I have my own thought real quick, is that the directionality of this means the threat actors can only spoof a number as they call you. They cannot spoof receiving that number. And so when you call a known number yourself, that is not subject to that same attack. So that's why this is so important. So I just want to double down on that. The other piece I'll say out of this title, Threat Actors Acting, is that we always think of this like security as a done thing. I'm just protected. That's not true. I heard a great comparison. Fitness, right? We don't stay in shape because we got in shape. We don't get rid of my fat belly and I'm in shape and then I stop working out and then I stay in shape. It's not how this works. It's a constant effort. And I think, what we're seeing here is threat actors are going to continue to evolve. They're a business, just like your business continues to evolve. And you have to be able to stay ahead of that or hire people and partner with people that can help you stay ahead of that. So threat actor is going to act, user's going to user, which means it's always going to turn out for the threat actor. You got to get better at finding it, having good processes in place to block it, having ways to limit the damage. And that'd be my call out from 8 is, threat actors going to be threat actors.
Absolutely. And the one thing that also comes to mind, Tammy, in your description is sales pipeline. Whenever a company is trying to bring on new clients, victims, money, whatever, we basically will go out with a marketing campaign where we will spend fractions of pennies to get people's initial attention, whether in terms of per eyeball, in terms of mailers or emails or websites or TV commercials or whatever. But then when someone actually responds to something, now we'll spend a little bit more money to engage with them and get a better return for investment. The exact same thing is happening in your case.
Yeah.
They can spend literally fractions of pennies per person with very, very low return, but then they'll ratchet up the expense on their part because they know that their people are going to get better returns. So cool.
Great point.
That's one.
All right. So we're back to the odd numbers. So if you're playing
we
along at home, this means
I'll
you can take your break. Yep. See you in a sec. No. So one of the parts of what Tammy was just talking about is they'll impersonate the bank. How do they do that? The way they do that is a thing called a homograph. And what that means is, let's say a capital L looks like, or a capital I looks like a lowercase L. That's a type of a homograph attack. And what's happening there is when a bad guy, to Bob's point earlier, has gotten past that initial no expense, kind of low cost marketing push, and they've got a victim on the hook, right? They've found that victim. Tammy replied back to that message and they're talking with her. Then they may or may not buy an impersonation domain to further the fraud. Right. And so what they're going to do is, let's say you're talking about ironscales.com. That might be elronscales.com now, right? Because we're going to put in a lowercase L to solve that. But it gets even more insidious because the type of ways we deliver web data actually now also allows you to use other languages. And other languages like Cyrillic letters are also similar in the actual style of what you're reading. And so if you're reading keybank.com, it might be a Cyrillic E. It might be and so those domains aren't necessarily always owned. And so they're called IGN homograph attacks. The point being, it kind of goes back to that same phone call thing. Just because you receive an email from bestbuy.com doesn't necessarily mean it is Best Buy, right? And it really does take some discernment in that and come back to some validation pieces. But really, when it comes to the attacks that you would do against ACH and wire transfers, it's one of the most effective methods I've seen. They get a victim and say, hey, they break into Bob's account and they get the AR that needs to be paid, right? The accounts receivable. They then buy a domain just like Bob's domain and send out an email from that new domain with that Cyrillic letter that gets through all your spam filters because it is a legitimate domain and it has a copy of your last correspondence with Bob and just continuing that with a reply. Then that person, Tammy, receiving it on the other side for the ACH says, hey, I need to update our ACH instructions. And it goes all the way back to the payroll fraud that Tammy talked about before. Your next response has to be external out-of-band validation. In the worst one that I saw was a $1.9 million loss for this company. And they wired it, and they actually had administrative controls to validate that change in ACH. And they called. They didn't answer. So they called the number in the email. And the number in the email was the threat actor. And the threat actor said, yes, of course, change the wire. We want you to do it now. We want payment. And they paid it out and they lost that. And that was done because of initially this ability to be that person when they're not that person. To really simplify this down, I did a speech in front of 8th graders called "When Grandma Ain't Grandma," and it was bringing those same concepts into light. Yeah, it was great. It was great. I actually have a challenge coin from their principal afterwards for doing it. But
That's awesome.
when grandma ain't grandma, and what was really cool was this one 8th grade girl we were doing a kill chain analysis, and the point was to say, up here with all these steps, where could you have stopped this threat actor from attacking? And the girl goes, acting like maybe this is a dumb answer in her head. She goes, maybe just called grandma. And I was like, yeah, 100%. You answered what some adults don't answer. Good for you. And it's the same defense from the earlier one. If it doesn't look right, or if it feels, even if it feels to somewhat normal, but you're changing an activity that means a change of payment, go validate that in ways that you've pre-documented and predestined. And if you can't validate it, don't make the change. Right? Like this is, I mean, anyways, sorry, I'll get off my high horse here, but domains can be impersonated is the point for 7.
Cool.
I think that just to add one little thing here, something that we've seen happen too is where people don't realize when they use search engines like Google or other things, if you search for KeyBank, the first thing that pops up isn't necessarily KeyBank, right? Those are paid ads. So not everybody realizes when you're using a search engine and you're looking for something, you need to be very careful of what pops up first, because what pops up first are the people that paid for their ads to pop up first. And back to Matt's example, right? They can purchase these domains that look very close to something that's legitimate, and it's going to show at the top because they probably paid for it to show up at the top, especially at the holiday time, right? If they have something, some site that they know people are going to navigate to. So just be careful of what pops up, and it'll say it's a paid. So just keep that in mind, that not necessarily the first thing that pops up means that's the best thing you should click on. It just means they're the one that paid to have it show up first. And so be cognizant of that.
I'll give you a real life example of this real quick. I went to New York City, and I'm an old country boy from the South. And I walk out, and this guy goes, "Come, get in cab. Come, get in cab." That first guy was a paid not cab that was going to take me to Gypsy Cabland. And some ladies pointed me over the other direction. So this is not new. This has just been delivered in the internet.
Right. Yeah.
Which actually,
everything more fun.
A lot of this stuff isn't new.
Right.
It's just technology's come up with a new way to deliver it more effectively and more profitably for the bad guys.
Well, and that's where we're at, right? Kind of Matt's example from the very beginning of the call. Why do we go after it? Because the banks have the money. Well, why do you go after people using online and digital methods? Because that's where the people are, right? We're on our phones constantly. I'm sure everybody has their phone within their reach right now. Not that you're not paying attention, but it's close, right? And so that's where the users are, is digital. And so that's where you go, right? Not to say that personal attacks don't and can't still happen. People are still breaking into cars at Christmas time, right? If you leave your Christmas presents on the back seat, that doesn't mean somebody's not going to break into your car or open your door to get it. But, more people are digital. And so that's where they're going to go after the biggest bang for their buck. These are businesses. They want to go where the money is at.
Absolutely. All right, Tammy, keep going. Credit card abuses.
All right, credit cards. Let's see. What do we say about this? So from a credit card perspective, I think it's similar to some of the things we're saying. So we've already kind of said. So really what I wanted to say around credit card information is, are you validating the site that you're going to? Where are you entering your credit card information? Because right, that's how they're going to get it. Is that if you're going to some site or entering something, whether you're getting that great ad that's coming to you on your phone, text coupon, whatever it is, and you're going in there to enter it right now and doing online shopping. If you're entering or going into social media and you see that great thing and you're entering your information there, they now can, have access to your credit card information. Another interesting one that I've heard about, I haven't seen it as much, but I think we're going to see more. And maybe Matt, you've heard more about this on my side at the bank. I haven't seen it as much, but QR codes too, right? I don't think people realize the dangers. Oh no, I started something I didn't know.
You pulled a string. You pulled a string,
What did
Tammy.
I do?
I have a video on
people
YouTube
realize
demonstrating the attack.
Do you?
It's so bad.
Yeah,
I
don't
won't
think
scan
people
QR code.
people realize the dangers behind QR codes, and this is something that I've started to talk to people about this year. more because and I always get like a shocked face and I say, well, snapping a QR code is no different than clicking a link, but now QR codes have become so commonplace since COVID because we didn't touch, you couldn't touch anything.
Right.
Before
Yep.
that, I can honestly say like I didn't really scan QR codes that much, but
And now
then
your
it
banks are
just
using them. Like they're
right, it
everywhere.
just
Like it's nuts.
became a part of everyday life. And so
Yeah.
being aware of, I heard an example, right? And maybe this go we'll pretend we're going to stick with the holiday theme, right? But where they were taking parking meters and there's the stickers on the parking meters and you scan them and then it takes you to a website so you could pay for your parking spot or whatever, but they were covering those up with fake stickers with different QR codes. Well, now think about what you're going to enter. You're going to enter all of your personal information. This is Tammy. Here's my credit card number. I'm paying for my parking spot. I'm a little scared on what Matt's getting out of his little
Yeah, I'm
box
just
back
gonna
behind
say.
us. Squirrel. Like we're all distracted now to see what he's about to pull out
Right.
of there. But right, so it's just being aware of like what are you scanning? Do you know the source of it? I don't know how many restaurants I've been to. We're used to seeing it to scan to get your menu, but I've also been in restaurants where there's random QR stickers on the wall where it's like scan here and you can win a prize.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my husband will lift his phone and I'm like, don't you even think about it. And so, right, like it's just become just part of the norm of every day that we don't think like it's no different than you clicking on that bad link that we're always preaching to you. QR codes have the same danger. So
Yeah.
just,
100%.
wherever you're entering your credit card information, do you really trust and know where you're at? And have you validated it before you start giving that information away?
I was looking for my 4-inch printer. I have a QR code printer. And on my YouTube channel, I did a demonstration of how quickly, under 60 seconds, I can replace a QR code on a table with a malicious QR code that still takes you to the menu, but installs
Yeah.
malware, steals things,
Yeah.
credit card information if possible, depending on your phone's configuration.
Matt, can you get me the link for that video? Because we will send out an update with the
Yep.
recording and all that for that
Yep,
video.
be glad
Perfect.
to.
The one thing I also want to bring up, and this actually happened in the 90s, okay, because I'm old. A guy ran a New York Times classified ad. Those of you on listening can ask your parents. That basically said, "Last chance to send your dollar in with an
Right.
address," and he got $75 running it over a weekend.
Ugh.
Okay, and so this is not new.
Right.
This
It's
is
just a different way.
right, and we make things. We want, from a business standpoint, we want that impulsiveness. We want that impulse buy. We want that instant gratification of whatever it is. As humans, as organizations, we want to get rid of the friction and the overhead. And unfortunately, everything we do technology-wise to do that also introduces the ability for bad actors to take advantage of that impulse, to take advantage of that quick click.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you'll end up being potentially in one of Matt's boxes.
100%. All right, 5 Best Buy cards. So I'm going to call out something here that's basically one of the attack vectors people use, which is going to go along with another one we're going to talk about later. But let's just say if you get a request to go buy Best Buy cards, scratch them off, take a picture of them, and send them, it's definitely a scam. 100%.
Wait,
Like there's
what?
not ever going to be a time. Yeah, I know, Bob, but that was just me asking you. That was
Oh,
different. That
okay.
was different. Yeah, that's different. Yeah. And why? Let's just ask what they're doing there. Let's be common sense people. If a threat actor says, hey, and you don't know it's a threat actor, you've been conned at this point or taught that this is somebody you should trust. If a threat actor is doing this, they just need to scratch it off and get the code and the PIN number, and then they go use it. They don't need the card. And what they're taking advantage of is people's belief that I still have the cards. I didn't do anything with these. I just know they're now usable. I can take that picture and it turns into money. So now picture equals money. It's like Banksy, right? So we're at this point now where you've got to be careful if you're asked to buy gift cards of any type and send the information in a picture or send the information to someone, you need to validate the source. You need to validate why that would even be the thing that someone's trying to do. And this is a lot of the attack vector. The other side of this is you need to be careful where you're buying your gift cards. They also need to be a reputable source. There's a lot of those things, to Tammy's point earlier. You get the email to take advantage of this Black Friday thing. That could all be completely a scam. there's a way to make that complete. It's harder to do with credit card fraud. It's harder to do in that way, but it absolutely could be a scam. And so you just have to understand. I don't want to make people be suspicious all the time, but I do. I think there's a certain amount of, I don't walk in the street without being suspicious if a car is coming. And I think this is the point. But threat actors going to act, and Best Buy cards or gift cards are a great attack vector.
Cool. Tammy?
No, I don't. I think the only thing I would add is like, don't just use this knowledge for yourself, but also think about like your family and friends and who you can tell this about. So my husband hears me tout about this all the time, right? When he used to work a later shift, he would have to listen to me talk about this all the time. And so I thought he tuned me out, but he did tell me there. So he used to work at Lowe's, and he said there was an older gentleman that came in, and he was just like, he could tell he was frantic, and he was like disheveled, and he was, he could tell he was concerned, and that just put up red flags for him. And they do sell gift cards there, right? A limited number, but they sell them. And so he came in, and he was on a cell phone call, and the gentleman, like my husband was like, "Do you need help finding something? Are you okay?" And he was getting concerned, and the guy said, "Yeah, like he said, or they said on the phone, I need to get gift cards. And so where are your gift cards?" And my husband was like, "What? Well,
Wait, no,
who?"
what?
They did
Who?
on the phone. Yeah. What? And so like immediately red flags went up, right? And so I think all of us just, like it can happen anywhere at any time. And I think it's
Absolutely.
just making sure that we're sharing this knowledge out because, we attend things like this, or we know people, like Matt and myself, and that we're sharing this, but making sure that we're sharing this knowledge out to others because they don't realize that that's happening. And so he was able to tell him, hang up the phone. That's not legitimate. It's a scam. He's going to steal money from you. And I think he
Right?
used the premise of like, I need this for some emergency that happened to somebody, right? Because they like to throw in like your grandson
Something
who you
urgent.
can't
Yeah.
call,
Yeah.
right? And so they're triggering those
Yep.
emotions. So just, somebody randomly calling you, telling you that you have to buy those gift cards should be a trigger, but some people just don't realize that. So just sharing is caring in this method. Don't share and answer quizzes online. That's bad sharing. This, sharing this information is good sharing.
Yeah, and just one last point on this is this gets back to we want, not me personally, but people by and large, we want to be helpful. We want to be cooperative. We want to be seen as we're going to leave the room better than we found it. And the way to do that is to cooperate when there's something that's communicated to us with a sense of emergency or urgency, to be the one who, we came to the rescue and the like. And this is a really, really easy and unfortunately effective way for the bad guys to take advantage of this, especially, and I hate to say this, and I am one of them, especially for the elderly.
Yeah, definitely elderly.
So yeah, absolutely communicate it. So fraudulent sellers.
Oh, it's that great time of year, right? Our favorite time of year where there's all those must-have gifts, where I'm very thankful that my children are older and I'm not standing outside in a snowstorm to get that must-have video game system that my teenage son or whatever had to have. I'm glad I'm past those days. But right, there's those must-have gifts, and I want to expand this a little bit more to say also think about things like natural disasters. I know we're on the holiday theme, but there was that recent hurricane in Florida. They like to take advantage of those things. So in times of stress, and yes, the holidays can be stressful. You're trying to get everything done. You want to get that perfect gift for, that person, your grandkids, your spouse, whatever. And you can't find that gift anywhere in the stores, right? And so then now you get these magical emails or text messages or Facebook ads that's that video game system that they just have to have. And look, I can get it and they'll ship it to me, and all I have to do is click on this site. I'll have it soon. They have plenty in stock, no other store anywhere or online in your reputable dealers, right?
With this
None of them
magical
have it.
bastion.
But they magically have this batch of, hundreds of systems. So no problem with stock. So you just click on this link, just go to this website, enter your information. It's great. I'm sure you'll get that, video game system in time for Christmas. Those are scams, right? And similarly, right, charity sites, right? Charity sites are another big one at the holidays or when natural disasters happen, where, again, back to Bob's point, it's human nature. We want to help people. The holidays give us that warm and fuzzy feeling, right? And so we want to share that and we want to help people. And that's awesome. I totally want you all to do that. But make sure you're really giving to reputable charities, because they will set up and send out those fake emails that we want to feed the homeless and feed all of that, right? That's great. Go to local charities that and recognize. Go to places, right, like Red Cross, that are legitimate, and donate that way, because you're then just funding these bad guys, whether it's through buying this gift that you're never going to see delivered, and hey, now by the way, they have your credit card information, so they could perpetrate some of the other things up above we talked about. So
Yep.
just being careful.
Yeah.
So, Matt, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second because it's fun.
Sure.
Taylor Swift.
Okay.
Taylor Swift apparently, and I couldn't tell you a Taylor Swift song to save my whatever.
I unfortunately can, but it's okay.
She unfortunately, or she whatever, apparently just put online a whole bunch of tickets.
Yes.
For concerts, and it crashed systems and all that. You're a bad guy. You want to take advantage of that. What would it take for you to put together an email campaign or a web campaign or whatever to get people? Just walk through it. You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, no problem.
Walk through something like that.
I would buy a domain somewhere where I have privacy registration, probably something like Cloudflare, under a fictitious account.
How much money?
$8, $9.
Okay,
So I'd spend $9 for a domain. I'd spend a $20 license trial with Microsoft to spin up a Microsoft domain. I would set up all the DKIM and DMARC signing, which makes it legitimate and show up and actually make it through your mail filters usually. And then I would actually set up a website. I'd buy a DigitalOcean web box. That'd be about $19 for a month, but I'd pay it as I use it, so it'd only be a few dollars. And I would spin up that site on known good inside the United States infrastructure. I would then set up that site as a recipient point, and I would send emails out to elicit you to go to this site. I could probably spin that up in 35 minutes, 25 minutes, maybe, depending on delays and DNS propagation. But you could have that up pretty quickly and very, very valid within certainly an afternoon. And I would be able to then use third-party services like Mailgun or other delivery spaces to send out that "See Taylor Swift Live" point that Roddy just made, right? Yeah. So I don't know if that was 30 seconds. It probably exceeded it. But the point is, I could do this in a way that cost me maybe $45, $50 out of pocket, but have little, like, high deliverability. It'll look just as good as the ads coming from everybody else. It'll have all the same hallmarks of everything, except for it'll be a new domain, except for it'll be a newly set up site, except for it'll be a newly registered, right? And I can use third-party payment sources like Stripe or other things to register quickly to receive those funds. And I can do all that under somebody else's stolen data so that I actually am emulating somebody else that's the victim. Now, I don't do that. I couldn't do that, Bob, but that's just off the cuff what
right. So my point is to piggyback on what Tammy was saying is that every time the bad guys see anything in the news that causes people to go, oh, I want, oh, I need to help, oh, I better, whatever. We're not talking about a ton of money or time or effort or even highly technical. And the first time they've done it, it'll take them a lot longer. But then they can do basically the same thing over and over and over again and make a good amount of money.
You can also check out Roddy Bergeron's Fiverr account. He'll set it up for you if you're a threat actor in the making.
Roddy will set anything up.
I mean, Roddy's a good
basically. You want a lemonade stand? He's your guy.
Roddy's got you, bro.
So speaking of Roddy, too good to be true, Matt.
This is kind of an maybe.
Sorry,
allegedly. Yeah, so this is kind of playing off of Tammy's point about fraudulent sellers. One of the worst fraudulent sellers, just to make this out of the holiday conversation as well, is a house. They emulated the seller of a house. They were able to gather all the data. They set up the way they were selling it properly. They got a realtor. They sold a house. They got the money. And it was a fraudulent seller. There was never a person actually selling it. So the title insurance takes it. The lenders take it. But the point is, the too good to be true usually is. It's a statement that's made forever, right? And it is this kind of caveat emptor process that we have in the United States, which is let the buyer beware. And oftentimes, to Roddy's point earlier about eBay shipping boxed video games that had nothing in them, right? It was just the box as an early delivery method. But the point is, there's a lot of this type of attack surface. And let's just take it as something everybody does. You bought something on Facebook. You show up to meet the person. You do your transaction in cash, and it's not what they purported, or it's dead, or it doesn't work, or it's fake, or it's stolen, or it's right. And so typically too good to be true, comma space, it usually is. And I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I don't want to beleaguer this point, but just understand if something's too good to be true. My grandfather had, what is his life lesson, right? What is life? What's the meaning of life? And he said, you know what? It's no free lunch, right? There is no such thing as a free lunch. There's always going to be some string. And if it's going to be so good and it's so cheap, then it's probably going to be fake. And that is the unfree part of the lunch, right? So anyways.
Cool. And I'm going to skip because we are running low on time. So I'm going to move on to number 2.
Or you just don't like odd numbers. It's cool.
That's the number that I don't
like. So wire transfers, right? They like wire transfers. They're fast. You can send them international. A lot of times what we see where the wire transfers are being taken advantage of is in business email compromise. That continues to be one of the biggest threats that we see to our businesses and our companies. So what's interesting about here, right? The scenario is they send a very convincing email to you at your company. It's typically what we've seen lately, right? It's melded over time, but what we've seen lately is they either compromise a vendor that you work with, their email account, so it is legitimately their email account, or they're spoofing it in some way. And we've been talking about spoofing for a while, right? They're creating some fake thing and making it look like it's their email address. They send you something, and again, they can do their research. They can copy company logos off of the web, right? They're signing with legitimate names that they're finding, the names from LinkedIn or public websites. Then what they do is they usually are creating a fake invoice, or simply they're just sending an email saying, hey, we need you to pay this, invoice or pay us for these goods. And, in order to do that, we do have a change of payment instructions. So they're either going to ask you to change the banking information alone, or they're going to ask you to change the banking information. And sometimes we also see them changing the payment method in which it's received. So you normally pay them in check, and now they want you to send ACH. You normally pay in ACH, and now they want you to send wires, right? And so it should always be a red flag. And again, to Matt, don't want to make you suspicious, but kind of do, right? I want you to be skeptical of any kind of communication that's involving money or a change in the way you're sending money. So the big thing here is, and I always call it like cooking it old school, even though my husband knows I hate to always call people and talk to them. If there's a digital way, I try to do that. But this is an instance where you need to pick up the phone if they're asking you to change the way or where you're sending them money to. Pick up the phone to your known contact. Do not call, and Matt already said this, don't call the number on the email. Call the person directly at the known number that you have and say, hey, I saw that you asked us to change these payment instructions. Is it legitimate?
Yeah.
That literally will stop that from happening. And it's such a simple step, but it's something that often gets skipped. And that simply can stop that, scam from being successful.
Yep. And most importantly, have plans in place of how someone can change a payment method.
Yes.
Back to Tammy's earlier point, back to that payroll. If you were using something like ADP and they had to sign in, they had to have MFA before they themselves could self-service and change that, then a lot of that onus goes down to the payroll person, or down to the person receiving the pay, right? The payee, as opposed to you as a company. And in this same breath, having these multiple methods of validation that are more automatic and built in means if someone emails you and tries to follow an out-of-band process, you can force them to follow the way that you've set it up from a process perspective, or you can easily identify them as not a real person, but a threat actor. So I like having well-defined methods of changing payment methodologies.
And you'll notice that there's the theme, and this is something Ann pointed out a bit ago, is multi-factor authentication isn't just a thing on your phone. Or
right.
Multi-factor authentication is you verify, you authenticate what the requests are using a mechanism that's part of the software or by calling people where you like.
Yeah, it's those layers of control, right? Layers of security. There's no silver bullet in security. So it's those layers of, if you don't get past this, then we'll put something else. And even things like dual approval drool approval. Couldn't even spit
Not
that
drool
out.
approval.
On wire
Drool
transfer.
approval.
That's a
Right,
dog
not
related
that.
concept.
Yeah.
That may be our next webinar topic because I just think
Exactly.
it would be weird.
Exactly. So, having more than one person so that if it gets past the first person or if one set of credentials get compromised, there's a second person that has to approve it and review it before it can go out the door.
Cool. And now we're going to go to the last one, which is an odd number. So Tammy, I don't know if you want to go catch a coffee.
Yeah, Roddy actually kicked out the same conversation here that we'll end with on that last topic. He said they got called into a wire fraud, 500,000 wired to the wrong bank, took the payee 10 days to get back and ask. By that point, the clawback provisions of those ACH are already not executable at this stage, right?
And that's actually, and I will go back to Tammy with you on this. You need to be aware of how your bank handles fraud. Do you want to spend a second on that one? As far as for commercial clients and the like?
Yeah, I think just making sure that you are notifying, right? I always say, like, be suspicious of what you're getting. If something feels off, validate it. And the third thing is if something goes bump, let your bank know right away. Like, that's the simplest way. Like, you want to let us know as soon as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right.
This last one is back to that social engineering. And I'd like to end on this because social engineering is often what everything has an underpinning of, at least other than the raw, pure technical methodologies. But a CEO that isn't really him or her, we're not trying to be inclusive or exclusive in this statement, but the CEO that isn't really him or her is an attack method where someone is saying, I now know enough about Bob or of Tammy, the CEO, that I can go spoof and pretend to be them. And oftentimes it's at times of new hire when you've got a new employee or something like that. And they're going to reach out and say, as a text message from a vishing type attack or a voice phishing or a phishing attack over SMS or smishing attack. They have such cool names. But an SMS attack where you get a text message and it says, hey, this is Tammy, your CEO. Please go buy those Best Buy cards we talked about and send them over. Hey, this is Tammy, your CEO. Please change the wire instructions on that one wire going out to SMS company or whoever it may be. And the point is that this comes back to trust should not be permanent. Just because you trust an individual, that individual may not always be that individual, nor that individual may always be a good individual. And I think this is one of the things I'd like to leave you with is not trying to create dystopia in your belief in humankind, but certainly just understanding that manipulation by saying someone in power, my CEO, is asking me to do something. I'm a new employee. I'm low on the totem pole. I just got hired to do toilets. And now here I'm being asked to have this prestigious task of putting down my toilet wand and buying on my own personal dime $2,000 worth of gift cards and sending them to Tammy to save her day because the bank account is down on the business account. And so you see so many of these type of things where CEO impersonation or officer impersonation is so easy. Why? Because you probably publish your officers and owners quite proudly on your website, and they're quite proudly listed as the head of all your socials and quite proudly. And so the attack vectors become quite personal to that CEO. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to actually compromise your CEO. I would much rather have it come from somewhere where you trust, like Teams. And now it's Bob on Teams saying, hey, I need you to do this. And when I push back, you say, do you really want to work here anymore, toilet guy? Right. And you have this ability. And I think the point is, if you are in that situation and you've received a communication from something you trust, it really is Bob in Teams saying, I need these gift cards. Then this again goes right back to Tammy's point of have out of band validation methods that you follow where you say, hey, let me go talk to Bob in his office, or hey, let me call Bob on his cell, or hey, does anybody have Bob's cell? I'm getting this weird thing, or hey, security team, I'm getting this weird thing from Bob. I think it would help to be a little more sus, if you will, of things.
Yeah, I'm getting this weird thing from Bob. I tell you, that's an uncommon thing, but I do.
And Roddy does close it out with, and the corporate culture of don't ask questions, just do, plays right into the hands of attackers here.
Right. Yeah, having an empowered workforce and letting them know it's okay to pause, take a breath, and ask a question is so important.
I know we're over time, but I want to add something else to this because there's a concept called social proof. This concept was actually popularized in Great Britain in the 80s, but it's this concept of if I took Bob, who spoke English and had never, ever been exposed to the culture of whatever city or fictitious place that speaks English, and I dropped him off in that culture, very rapidly, Bob would be doing the same things. He'd be standing the same lines. He'd be going to the same things that others are doing. And it's because we as entities want to be included. That is just human nature. Else we'd have never sat around the fire together and formed communities. So the point is that social proof says, instead of beating up someone for coming to you with a security event that was nothing, or making them feel terrible about the decision they made, one should instead lean into making that a very welcomed thing, a very thanked thing, of saying, thank you for calling the bank about this wire fraud. Let's deal with this as quickly as possible. Thank God you called me 6 minutes after it happened. We might have the ability to stop this. And that kind of thing is rewarded. And so if you take that all the way down to how we train our people, and we do these phishing tests, right, where people fail and succeed, the companies that do it wrong go out and say, Bob, you clicked, you lost, ha ha, I got you, you lost. It'd be much better to focus on the 80% that didn't click and talk about how amazing they are, because eventually Bob would put down his curmudgeonry and decide to actually participate in not clicking links.
Wait, what?
So, yep.
The curmudgeonry is not going away.
Okay, fair. I may have overshot my load there, but that's okay.
Tammy, your last comments on this?
I don't know that I have anything else to add. I think we've covered everything really well. I just share. That's my biggest thing. Share the knowledge out as wide as you can.
And I guess let me throw out a couple of things, and then we'll wrap up. And people have been putting in comments throughout, so thank you very much. If you have any last comments or questions, go ahead and put it in. We want our people to be productive. We want ourselves to be productive. So there's a human nature that is naturally working against us. Because the bad guys can take advantage of us. And this is nothing new. It really isn't. We've just come up with ways to circumvent other methods of measuring it or the like. And so it's one of those things where we have to accept the fact that this is here to stay. In a lot of cases, the bad guys are operating out of countries that are not punishing or not blocking, and in fact protecting these boys and girls. So they can afford to hire the best and brightest. And there is no downside to them doing this thing. So it ain't going away. Yeah. So with that happy note, I would say reach out to any of us as far as this is being pushed up on LinkedIn. It'll also be pushed up on YouTube. Add comments to it. Share this. Love to get any feedback or the like. Thank you for the presentation comment, Aurora Chamber of Commerce. Can I just call you Aurora?
And the way my brain works is it really Aurora Chamber of Commerce?
That's true.
Sorry. It's just how I think.
It could be Solon. That would be the way they do things.
Could be. You never know.
In any case, thanks everybody for attending this and paying attention and all that. Again, we wanted this to be a little bit loose, and I certainly think it was. Tammy, thank you for putting up with Matt, because I normally can't do that very well. And Matt, thank you for being Matt. And thank you for sharing that link. I'll also share. Matt and I have done a couple of other videos on some various conceptual stuff, and we'll share that in the comments as well. So thanks everybody. Have a great holiday, and see you in the funny papers.
Now we watch him find the button to end the stream.
Oh, you got that right. First, I have to find my mouse.
It was right over